War, violent conflict, terrorism, and violent extremism have differential and devastating consequences in society. However, there is numerous evidence that violent conflict disproportionately affects women and girls and intensifies pre-existing gender inequalities and discrimination. What more, women are also active agents of peace in armed conflict, yet their role as key players and change agents of peace has been largely unrecognized. This podcast seeks to highlight why the participation of women in peace processes contributes to longer, more resilient, peaceful, and stable societies, economies, and governments. We promote a gendered perspective and women's equal and meaningful participation in peace processes, peace building, and security. Welcome, I'm your host, and my name is Quinta Mbori. On this episode, I'm joined by one gentleman called Juma Salim Juma, and he's the executive director of Kamukunji Community Peace Network, which is also known as KACPEN. KACPEN is a community organization that works in Majengo, and this is one of the slums in Nairobi, Kenya. It was started in 2018, and it works on countering biased narratives and preventing extreme violence. Welcome, Juma. How are you?
I'm very fine. Thank you for inviting me.
You're welcome. How is Majengo? By the way, I was told it's called Kije. How is Kije?
Yeah, Kije is fine.
Yes.
The youths there are very welcoming.
Yeah.
They are very nice people. Yeah, only that we have some challenges with the maandamanos and political violence and intolerance. Yeah, and the challenges of radicalization and violent extremism.
Anyway, we hope all of that will come to an end in the near future. Now, today on Women, Peace and Security podcast, we basically want to unravel some of the initiatives that have been taking place behind the scenes to mitigate violent extremism that has been happening around the country. And just like we were talking before the show,
Okay.
a lot of times people wait to react to, incidents. Mm-hmm. And we at Women, Peace and Security podcast are working towards prevention.
Yes.
Now, on to the first question. I'm just going to ask you, please tell me a bit about yourself, a bit about Juma Salim Juma, and of course, the motivation behind, you launching KACPEN. How many years ago?
Since 2018.
2018, exactly, yeah. Yes.
We founded Kamukunji Community Peace Network in the year 2018 after seeing a threat to our community and our country. People in our community started being divided through misinterpreted religious verses that were used by some known young men who used to be sheikhs and religious leaders in our neighborhood. They started by calling out for youths to come to the mosque. It started like an advocacy group called Majengo Muslim Youth Center. As you all well know, that Majengo has many grievances. It's one of the historic neighborhood in Kenya where various African presidents used to live there, like Kagame, Kenyatta. All those presidents used to live in Majengo. But up to now, Majengo has been neglected by all the governments. It still remains like a museum. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so looking at the vulnerabilities, the historical injustices, now there is also a threat to enforced eviction. There is also enforced police. There is brutality and disappearances, and those are some of the things that are making that community to be fertile for radicalization and breeding of terrorism. So we started it in 2018 because I personally, when I completed my O-level studies in 2009, I was also radicalized because I was jobless, I was unemployed. So just like any other Kenyan, a Kenyan youth used to go to the local mosque to do my daily prayers. Then in those prayers, after prayers, there are darsas, short talks, where we used to be given some talks by the imams, the sheikhs in our mosque there. So he used to talk about jihad and fighting for Islam and defending Islam. He used to tell us about what is happening in Syria, Afghanistan, and those countries. So he told us, most of us young people in Majengo are busy watching tournament, Manchester, Arsenal, chewing cat, talking about women, instead of coming back to the way of God to defend our brothers in those countries. So many of us found his messaging very appealing. So we started to go back to the mosque, and that's when we started receiving those narratives of radicalization. So after that, many of my childhood friends decided to join him, and because everyone was disappearing, like in that congregation, you find out that in this day one of us is missing, the following day another person is missing, until it became very alarming in the community, and mothers and fathers started to shout and to demonstrate that their children are missing. Then they went to the officer commanding the station, Shaurimoyo, there to complain against that sheikh, was Ahmad Iman Ali. Then after a few days, the government came out strongly saying that there is nothing like disappearing people, there is nothing like that. So people continued to go, and that's when I also got radicalized, and because we were all radicalized without knowing. We were told that we should fight for jihad, and it was done through the loudspeaker. And if you look at the proximity between the mosque and the local government offices, the DCs, the police camp, it is like less than 10 meters. So they could hear everything that was being discussed in the mosque, about the non-believers, about the kafir, all those people, and how if you go to Somalia to fight as a mujahideen, you'll die as a martyr, you'll go to paradise, all those stories. So after many of my friends went to Somalia, and I was waiting for my turn, which did not happen. I thank God. But many of my childhood friends who we went together with the madrasa to study religion, and also other friends who went to Somalia, that's when I realized that there is something wrong. And you can't question when an imam or a religious leader when he's giving a talk or leading prayer, you can't question anything. You just have to follow. Then after you're done with the listening and participating in those activities, you just leave the mosque. So after that, I was invited by a friend from, Kamukunji has got 5 wards: Pumwani, California, Isili North, Isili Air Base, Isili South wards. Isili South ward is where there is Kiambio. It is another informal settlement that people are living based on their ethnic groupings. You'll find Luos living in one area together, Kikuyus there. Then during the 2007-2008 elections, there were clashes. So in that community, people fought. People burnt each other's houses. People were killed because of the post-election violence due to the elections. So I was invited by a friend who was attending another peaceful coexistence and cohesion program that was called Kenya Tunawezo program, that was being implemented by an international US organization called Global Communities, supported by the USAID. So when I attended that program, it was about alternative dispute resolution and reconciliation of that community. During tea time, I had a small talk with the facilitators there called Dr. Uthman Mujahid. Then I told him, what you're experiencing here is different from what I'm experiencing in my community in Pumwani, just a few meters from here. So he told me, because I remember that time he was telling people, when fire, before fire starts, there are signs, there are smoke, there are all
Yes.
those signs.
Yes.
So when you start noticing such signs, you should stand up and try and make sure that you put off that fire before it becomes uncontrollable.
Yes.
Yeah, so I told him that in our community, people are leaving the community, people are burning their IDs, they are burning their Kenyan and national documentations, they are calling each other kafir. If your parent is working maybe in the government, they will call you a kafir because you are working with the government. Even if you are a Muslim, any Muslim who's not supporting the Al-Shabaab's ideology, they are called munafik or murtad. People who are betrayers, they should be killed. So I told him all those things, the signs. Then he told me, whatever that you're experiencing is much dangerous than what we are dealing with here. So he called his colleagues and told them, listen to this young man. Then I narrated the same story. Then after that, few months later, we were supported with another program. The Kenya Tuna Uwezo they were wrapping up. So after hearing our experiences, they decided to support us, to come to our community and look for ways on how they can support the local leaders. So when they came back, that's when now I started Kamukunji Community Peace Network and started calling out the at-risk groups, my friends who are highly radicalized. We were very radicalized at that time. We wanted to carry out any activity,
any mission.
We wanted to be given any assignment locally or even in Somalia, because we were told you can't go to Israel, you can't go to Palestine, you can't go to those countries because you do not have visas and passports. But you can just sneak using a border to our neighboring country, Somalia, where it is an Islamic country, but the kafir, the non-believers, they are taking over, they are killing your brothers. And Islam is like a human being's body. When one part of the body is feeling pain, the whole body is not. So we were told to stand up together and go and defend them. So that's how I was rescued personally, and that's how we came up with Kamukunji Community Peace Network and rescued the entire community, although we still have that threat.
Well done, Juma Salim Juma. In fact, what you're not aware of, my dear listener, is the fact that KACPEN is award-winning, and in fact, Juma Salim Juma was also recognized by former President Uhuru Kenyatta in 2018. He was awarded the State Commendation Award. We'll talk about that later. Okay. Now, you said that indeed the Sheikh told you that where there's smoke, there's fire, and for a lot of families, they tend to miss out on these signs. And I've read over and over that there exists a very thin line between religion and extremism. Now, given that you are almost crossing that line, what do you think are some of the things that people need to look out for? What is religion and what is extremism? If you could just clarify that for us briefly.
Okay. Yeah, extremism, there is your religion is maybe your way of life. Then extremism is going beyond what is normal. Like, for example, when you start noticing someone maybe not being comfortable with a certain faith, or maybe even there are also people who are, like, for example, Manchester fans. When they are beaten, they become furious. They can even commit suicide. So the difference between extremism and these other groupings and actions is the ideology. Here, people are promised Jannah, paradise. People are promised 72 virgins after death. People are promised high levels.
Is actually true.
High levels of rewards. And people are being given very beautiful tales. That, like, when you are in the battlefield fighting, you'll not fight alone. You'll see angels, white angels coming with horses, with using swords, killing the KDF officers and other kafir and this government of kafir. So when you are told that, you develop confidence, high levels of confidence, and you believe that what you are fighting is holy war, it is God's war, so you should not fear. So that's what many of the at-risk youths who are being radicalized and recruited into these groups feel and believe, because people are using religious texts, people are using Quranic verses. So to counter that, you'll also need another Quranic verses, religious text that is much equally powerful to replace that one that was misinterpreted. But if you just tell them that the law of Kenya does not allow this, it is wrong, you should not kill a human being, you'll be speaking alone. So and that's what most of the religious leaders have been doing, and the government officials have just been telling people that I should not kill one another. And when you look at these sheikhs, they are very powerful, they are good orators, like Budrogo, Makaburi, Ahmad Iman, they are very good speakers. If you listen to many pastors and many politicians, you'll sleep, you'll not even it's like they are lecturing people. So most of the young people will not find their messages very appealing. They'll prefer to listen to Abu Drogo even more time than listening to pastors. That's the reason why in most churches and maybe lecture rooms, you will not find many youths. Many are not attracted to such. But when you listen to these people, they understand the communities better. They understand the grievances that the young people experience, the women experience. So when they come to your community, they will use your grievances, your local contextual issues.
Awesome. Now, I want to switch gears a bit, and I know men have been at the forefront fighting against countering violent extremism. But then again, there are these other characters that have been working behind the scenes, although they're not given enough space, or they're not given in the right platform. Or maybe, if I could say, they are being overlooked because of the agenda. Do you think women have a role to play in sustaining peace and security, particularly in the fight against violent extremism?
Absolutely, yes. Women are both perpetrators of violent extremism and radicalization, and at the same time, they are the people who can de-radicalize young people, that can also help in the fight, because there is also a hadith, a saying by the Prophet that says, when you educate a woman, it is as if you have educated the entire community. But if you leave a woman behind, it's as if you've left behind the entire community. So it is very, very important to also bring women on board and also empower them. Like Kamukunji Community Peace Network, before we started our interventions, our programming in terms of preventing and countering violent extremism in Kamukunji, we started by a program called Kumekucha. Kumekucha is a trauma healing program. Most of these women were not able to speak out. They were not able to come out strongly and also condemn these kind of things, because they were complaining. If you look at KTN YouTube, Al-Shabaab in Majengo, you'll find women and fathers complaining there is terrorism in Majengo. When it was starting in Majengo in like 2008, 2009 there. It was very powerful, but since they are helpless, they are not in authorities, it becomes very difficult to address such things. I remember there are women who are pushing their husbands and sons, challenging their gender, telling them, if you are a real man, you should not be around. You should be with other men in Somalia, in the battlefield, fighting this government that is not Islamic. You should be in jihad. We've had many cases where women have been pushing their opposite gender to fight, because I remember that time they also received their own darsas on radicalization, on jihad, and there were also verses that they were being encouraged to they were being told to allow their husbands to fight jihad, because they will also be given high levels of jannah and rewards in heaven after death. So in as much as they are players in recruitment and radicalization, they are also equally very important component in also addressing terrorism. So we did the trauma healing program with them. They cried, they vented, they shared, they talked, and after that they now became a resource for peace, because they were also fighting, they were blaming the government, and most of them were highly depressed and traumatized, because they used to look for their husbands and sons in mortuaries, in prisons, police cells, in hospitals, and they were only left depressed because they could not find their loved ones' bodies. So we partnered with an organization called Green String Network. They are experts in trauma healing. So we had like 300 families of people who've been directly affected by terrorism, as in their loved ones, their sons, husbands went to Somalia as terrorists, Shabab fighters. So we trained them in trauma healing, and they started their own healing journey, and they started to talk about these things in the saloons, in their water points, in their community hangout points, where the women gather and discuss their issues. And after that, we enhanced their skills. There's a program called Jichanue CVE. We enhance their CVE skills to prevent violent extremism, and to also note and maybe report some of the early warning signs. There are signs that when your son or husband has been maybe radicalized or recruited, you'll start seeing, like they'll start mentioning the word kafir a lot. They will start hating the government a lot. They'll prefer death more than living. They will also be talking about the global narratives, like they hate the West. They also want to revenge. They are talking about the grievances, and they believe that only violence can help them. And they also believe that they will get rewards after death. So apart from that, there are also signs. They put on certain dress codes, like cutting their trousers. They also put beards. Sometimes they do what is required Islamically, but they mix with their own ideologies and activities. In a nutshell, that's what we've been doing. Then after the Jichanue CVE program, they started, because in those programs we bring them together, the anti-terror police, the law enforcement agencies, the local administration, the DCs, the chiefs. We also bring in the community policing structures, the Nyumba Kumi, the religious leaders, the madrasa teachers, those families, women, mothers who have been affected by terrorism directly, the young people who are also highly radicalized, and also religious leaders from other faiths. Then after the trauma healing, Chanue CV, then after that they developed something called Kamukunji CVE plan of action, whereby it has components: the women pillar, the youth pillar, the ideological pillar, the media pillar, all those pillars, whereby they generated an action plan to address their own local issues, because we believe that every community has its own issues, and they also have their own intervention and solutions.
True story.
Yeah.
Amazing. Now, Salim, we're about to finish actually. What do you think can be done? Because When you talk about Majengo informal settlement, anytime you're talking about extremism, that's where people think about first.
Okay.
So do you think there are measures that can be taken either by government or non-governmental organizations or by the community itself to rebrand the face of Majengo slums? Like you had mentioned earlier, this is a place that even belongs in, the national heritage of this country, having been home to notable people. What do you think we can do to give Majengo informal settlement a new lease of life, a new face, and to restore the hope,
Yes.
Of families and the glory that it once, had? Yes.
Yeah. First of all, we need to give people hope, especially those families that are highly radicalized, because they've also experienced hard approaches by the security agencies for a long time before the soft approaches started. I also had an opportunity to be invited to the US to speak to some of the policymakers about what we are doing here, because they have found out that it is really working.
Yeah.
So that's when they realized that you can't kill an ideology using a bullet. And that's when the soft approaches now started to be welcomed by governments around the world.
Yeah.
Because when you use a bullet, you'll create more terrorists. So one way of addressing this thing is ensuring that we have alternative narratives. We use religious texts. There are many of them in the Quran, in the Bible, that talks about coexistence, peaceful coexistence, respecting people's religious beliefs. And also there is also a verse that says when you save one human being, it is as if you have saved the entire mankind. But when you kill one human being, it will be as if you've killed the entire mankind. And it's a verse, but most of the terrorists do not talk about it. They talk about violence and verses that promotes killings. So another thing is by motivating the frontliners, like youth leaders and also women leaders who are also influencers in the neighborhood, by motivating them, by giving them knowledge, and also encouraging them, and also coming up with also sustainable economic programs that will also help them, because we are told that an hungry man is an angry man.
Yeah.
When someone has an issue with they don't get food, that kind of a person can be easily influenced to do anything, because there are several research that have been done even by the Aga Khan University that proves a Kenyan youth can do anything for money. So if we have sustainable economic programs for women, for youths, for those families, it will be very important, because it will be addressing two issues. It will be hitting two birds with one stone. And also capacity building at risk groups and women, supporting women organizations and initiatives and youth initiatives that are also working underground in all those grassroots levels, supporting them by recognizing them, giving them funds and also trainings, and ensuring that they are doing something in their community and promoting patriotism, and also giving them space in security platforms. It will be very encouraging when you see a young person from Majengo who's a Muslim youth or a woman has become a chief in that area, or a police in that area, or anything in the government, because what they don't have is hope with their government. They do not have hope with the government. So when there are opportunities in government, it is very important to also give chance to these at-risk groups. That will also boost their sense of patriotism, and also it will also help in shrinking the pool of radicalization into violent extremism.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think That's it for me for today. I mean, you've brought out a very important point. You said you cannot kill an ideology with a bullet.
Yeah.
And I think that's a good point to end. Thank you so much, Juma Salim Juma,
Welcome.
HSC. Congratulations on that recognition, by the way.
Thank you.
At
Thank
least
you.
someone is recognizing the kind of work that you're doing. Thank you so much for creating time and for joining us on this episode of Women, Peace and Security.
Thank you, Quinta.
We don't take it for granted. Well, Women, Peace and Security podcast aims to prevent conflict and build and sustain peace. Your story could save millions of lives, because they say if you don't raise your voice now, then they'll seal your mouth forever. Please reach out today. Well, thank you so much for listening, and we hope that we'll be able to see you next time. I was your host, and my name is Quinta Mbori. Well, bye for now.